Guys, welcome to my channel. My name is ReadingBear and I hope you are ready for some more stories. And today, we'll take a look at some new entitled people content. If you enjoyed my content, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel and post some bear emojis in the comment. And now, let's dive right into the stories.
The first story is titled, "Company Built Factory on My Land, Destroyed My Home and Property While I Was Away." Hello everybody, I am from South Africa and want to tell you what happened when I ended up leaving my property unattended for a year. The reason I left was because I met the most amazing girl in the world and took a year abroad to spend with her and ended up proposing too. By the time everything got settled and I was ready to come back to South Africa with my wife, I noticed that things had been going wrong for the entire year. My happy bubble had been burst and replaced with seething anger when I saw my land had been totally destroyed. My property was almost complete farmland except for my house and was left without anything growing while I was gone. It was good because I was treating the ground and giving it a chance to rest and get strong again during the break. People might have heard about crop rotation, where you give areas rest before planting more there. My wife had never seen the land and was actually very excited to see it and just jump right into that life with me. I really felt like I had hit the jackpot of luck when it came to her. When we got there though, the only thing that seemed to still be there was my house. The area that was my farmland was covered with a factory that was so fenced in I couldn't even park my truck where I usually would. I had no idea what was going on and who gave somebody permission to build a factory right on my land. The worst part was that I had zero idea where to start looking to find out what had happened. I couldn't find any way to get through the gate and into the actual factory to speak to somebody. It is really because of other stories that I thought I could into town and see what was going on with my land. So, thank you internet for unknowingly preparing me for this situation. It turns out that while my neighbor did file to have a factory built and get it approved, it was not supposed to be on my land. It was supposed to be on land that he owned right next to mine. I told them that he built it on mine, and they told me they would send somebody out to look at the land and where the factory was placed. We were not home when that happened, but I knew that it did because my neighbor showed up afterwards to talk to me. Neighbor: "Wow, I didn't think you would be back so soon." Me: "So, you thought you could just build a factory on my land, and I was never going to come back and find out about it?" Neighbor: "Okay, look, I don't want to start a whole fight about this. You were gone for a year, and I really didn't think that you were coming back. The land was going to waste, and this was a good use for it." Me: "I saw the building permit. It was filed only a month after I was gone. You didn't think I abandoned the place, you just wanted to take advantage." Neighbor: "Whoa, listen farm boy, I would watch my tone if I was you. I have a pretty decent business now and can afford a lot better of a lawyer than a farmer that grows grain." That statement basically summed up everything. He did this because he thought that with enough money he could win any trial and keep the factory on my land. He was in for a huge wake-up call because I was not going to fall for his intimidation. I went out with my wife, and we found the best lawyer that we could afford and explained the situation to him. He was confident that we could win a lawsuit against the neighbor. We went after him for 15 million rand, which for the purpose of this story I am going to refer to it as the dollar equivalent of $1 million. He got himself a lawyer, and after a long wait we went to court to talk about the situation in front of a judge. My neighbor was sticking to his argument that he was convinced the lot was abandoned and free for him to use. Meanwhile, I had the evidence his permit was to build on his land and that he started building on my land only a little while after I was gone. I guess he didn't think I was smart enough to bring or even get that kind of evidence because you could tell that he was starting to get nervous. Mainly because his entire argument shifted from being allowed to use the land to it not being worth $1 million. Some of you might think the same thing because it was just farm, and nothing seemed to be destroyed. Let me explain a little bit of where I got that number and why it wasn't just me trying to get as much money as possible. For starters, he was using my land for almost a year without paying any kind of rent to the owner, meaning me. It was a big space and that alone would add up to a decent amount on its own. The main issue was that even if the factory got removed, the ground underneath it was now ruined and not suitable for planting anymore. It would take a long time to try and get the dirt healthy enough for a crop to grow as well as it would have before. So, while no buildings were destroyed, to a degree the land was, and that is my livelihood. I had science to back me up on that fact. Meanwhile, he was left with no real argument to why his factory was on my land. The original solution was not exactly what I wanted because while I did get the money, they were not forcing neighbor to tear down the factory. It went against some statute to dismantle a factory being used to produce necessary materials. I think the factory was helping make some microchips that the government was actually using, unless it was bankrupt or considered a danger. At first I was just going to take the money and maybe find somewhere else to move, even though I loved my farm and didn't want to leave it. Turns out though that due to some very poor financing on the part of my neighbor, he was pocketing and then promptly spending most of the profit. He didn't just have that kind of money to give me in the settlement. He had to declare the company bankrupt in order to get the money to pay me. Out of luck from that, the factory was allowed to be taken down and I could have all of my land back to try and salvage what I could. The neighbor also ended up moving shortly after, and I don't know if it was because of finances or because he wanted to get away from me. Either way, a win. As for me, I know that it sounds like a lot of money, but trust me when I say most of it went back into the farm. The ground needed a lot of work to grow healthy enough, and in that time I wasn't able to grow any grain or make money from it. My wife loved animals and suggested we get a barn and some cows in the meantime. A chunk of the money went to that, and it was the best idea because I love the cows and they are able to give up a small amount of profit from the milk. The rest of the money will tie us over until I can grow grain and get steady income again. I just hope that neighbor isn't off trying to pull a fast one on someone else that might not have the courage to fight back. The next story is titled, "You Can't Park Here, This Parking Lot is for Customers Only." Years back I had a 1986 Chevy Cavalier. My dad gifted it to me, which was super nice of him. It was not the greatest car, but it got me from point A to point B usually without any problems. One day I was headed to a friend's place, but I forgot that the Woodward Dream Cruise was going on. Side note. People who live near this event call it the Woodward Nightmare Cruise. It's an unending line of classic cars driving up and down Woodward Avenue from Detroit to Birmingham, an annual mobile homage to Detroit being the Motor City, and good times if you like old cars, modified vehicles, or craziness like motorized sofas or bar stools. As you can imagine, it draws quite a lot of people each year, and causes some extreme gridlock. So I'm caught in the cruise and maybe one half an hour of stop and go traffic has my old car overheated. If I didn't get some coolant, my engine was gonna be done. I'm a few blocks from a gas station, but traffic just isn't moving, so I pulled into the first driveway and parked in front of a shop I had never noticed. As I pulled in, steam was seriously shooting out from under my hood. Just as I'm getting out my car, this 60-ish gray-haired lady in a purple skirt comes running out the shop and yells, "You can't park here, this is customer parking only." I looked at her and then my car and she stammers, "You need to move your car or I'm calling the police." I wasn't going to move my car, driving at all would have literally killed it, but immediately inspiration for MC tickled my brain and I decided to walk into this woman's shop. She was clearly pissed off by this move and ended shadowing me around her shop, watching me like an angry hawk. The place turned out to be one of those new age incense, candle, astrology type shops. Okay, whatever, I can work with it. Partially to make my point, but mainly because I needed my car to cool off before driving it. I calmly scrutinized every single item she sold, all with her watching my every move. She followed me the entire time. In hindsight, I'm surprised that she didn't have a stroke. Meanwhile, this one other attendant working is getting her ass kicked by how busy this little place is the whole time, as she's doing all the actual work. I felt bad for the lady working, but I can practically guarantee this store lost a fair amount of money because this lady insisted on badgering me. Both to shoplifting by other people, which I had no intention of, and to people just leaving because their checkout time was crazy long. About 3 hours later the crowds thinned out, and I had seen literally every item there was to see in this place. At this point I figured my car was cooled off enough to make the short drive to that nearby gas station. I snatched up a $1 item I'd come across hours ago, a tiny, violet-colored floating turtle-shaped candle, and I paid for it. She was still visibly angry and very unfriendly as she rang up this single, insignificant and inexpensive item L. As I left, receipt in hand of course, I smiled and said, "Wow, it looks like I'm a paying customer, bye-bye." Angry gray-haired lady actually said nothing, but she literally turned red in the face. Also, the second cashier was somehow laughing hysterically as I walked out. Oh, and my mom ended up loving the little turtle candle. The next story is titled, "Only Plow When I Tell You To." This isn't actually my story, but my neighbor's, but he barely uses Facebook, much less Reddit, and loves hearing when this story gets spread around. I'll call him Brad for this story. Brad works for the county road department running a maintainer tractor for the dirt roads. It's basically a big tractor with a blade to scrape the roads. It also can double as a snowplow when needed. A few years ago the county road supervisor, Brad's boss, retired. The new guy wasn't from around the area, but he worked in a similar situation before. His name is Andy. Andy sadly got off on the wrong foot with the road guys. They were used to going to the roads they thought needed the most work. The old boss let them because they were on those roads every day, most of them even lived near them. Andy wasn't used to running things that way. He chewed out a few guys for going out without permission, citing budget cuts and that there wasn't enough money fuel up their trucks and tractors and they needed to work out when to work and where. Most of the guys understood that. The county board took advantage of a new guy and it was going to be a lean year. They stepped back. Then winter came. Most of the maintainer guys prepped their trucks and tractors to help out the plows. They always had because there were a lot of roads, too many for the number of plows the county had. The first snow that hit was pretty light. An inch or so, but the plows and the road guys got it cleaned up very quickly. When they came back in, Andy was furious. He thought he had made it clear that he could not go out to work wherever they thought they were needed. He yelled at all of them for it. All of them were very taken aback when he said, "Only go out and plow if I tell you to go out and plow." They met up outside and agreed to follow those directions to the letter. They took off any snowplow attachments they had and waited. The next week it snowed again, this time it was much more, nearly 2 feet of snow. And Brad sat at home and waited. He knew by 5 a.m. calls would start coming into Andy's office complaining about the roads. Our own driveways was completely impassable, but Brad had already called and explained the situation and we just enjoyed a day off. It only took until 9 for Andy to call up Brad. He hadn't been the first Andy had called either. "I know your plow stuff isn't on, but go ahead and get it attached and get out there when you can. Do whatever roads you usually do, I trust your guys' judgment. I'll see you tomorrow." And Brad got to work. It was after rush hour when he was done, but the roads were clear. The meeting was actually quite pleasant. Andy apologized for how he acted and promised that he would get more money to get the roads into shape somehow. He even thanked them for being up and out so quickly after he called them. They apologized for acting like they knew everything and said he was right to try and rein them in a little. Brad still loves his job, still plows and keeps the roads looking good. He says that from then on if Andy was yelling at you, you deserved it. The last story is titled, "Don't Touch the Thermostat. Think you're punishing me? Okay, no problem. This is a current ongoing MC. My landlord is also my roommate. I rent the bonus room above a 2-car garage in a 3-bedroom house. So me and my boyfriend, my landlord, and 2 other roommates all live here. It technically belongs to my landlord's mother. She has POA while her mother is in a nursing home recovering from a stroke. She has this very strict rule that no one is to adjust the thermostat but her. Which, since everyone's rent includes all utilities, is fair as long as she is reasonable about things. However, when the house was built my room was not insulated as well as it should have been. As a result, it's the hottest room in the summer and the coldest in the winter. I need a space heater when it hits mid-30s or lower. Additionally, the way the central air and heat are set up is less than ideal. There is only one return vent for the entire floor, which is in the hall. Anyway, last night we got into an argument about various things. It should be noted she doesn't have a job. Her entire income comes from renting the rooms as well as food stamps. She also lies to SS about her income just to get the food stamps. She spends her days sitting on her ass talking on the phone or trolling Facebook while watching TV. She thinks because she is the landlord she shouldn't have to clean anything at all or take out the trash. She got mad that no one took the cans to the end of the driveway for the collection last week. I had finally had enough and snapped and told her she had no room to complain because in the 2 years I have lived here she has never once taken it out. That lead into other shit like her not cleaning, etc. She lives here full time, she should take part in the cleaning and trash removal just as much as the rest of us. For the rest of this, you should remember I'm not the only one affected by her punishment, there are other roommates. Anyway, she feels like she is right and I am wrong. So to punish me, she turned the temp up on the AC to 77 knowing my room would hit 90 before the AC turned on. Well, on a normal summer day this would have been true. But it's been very cloudy and rainy here lately. It was only 78 outside today. She then proceeded to leave for the entire day. However, because today it only hit 78 and was insanely humid, the entire house turned into a sauna. Not hot per se, but humid as all get out. So the rest of my roommates and I used our box fans and ceiling fans to circulate air out into the hall where the thermostat was. This triggered it to turn on and run. So not only was the AC running, but all of our ceiling fans and about 5 box fans were running non-stop for hours on end. But it gets better. Because she set the thermostat at 77, the AC kept turning on and off, so the house never got cool. This meant it was using the electric all damn day, running up the bill. Plus she came home and her room was like an oven, so she had to turn the thermostat down to cool it off, running the bill up even more. So now she has run up her electric bill at the very least 3 times as much and pissed off the rest of the roommates. We were all on the verge of moving out en masse before this. At least one is threatening to give her notice on the 1st over this. My boyfriend and I are ready to go. We are just holding out a couple more months till we can get our ducks in a row and find a place. Thank you for listening.